My name's always yelled out on the set all the time because the first is yelling for me or the DP's yelling for me or theirs, because everybody knows Bill Effects. Nobody knows Bill Aldridge. Hey, Bill Effects. But that's my name, Bill Effects. Jack Faggard was a senior effects guy at Universal in the effects shop. I'd worked with him a few months before that, I guess, and when he got the script for the car, he either figured he liked what he saw in me or he thought he needed a young person to be running around the deserts and stuff. So either way, he picked me to be his second man on the car. The first time I ever got a break like that to actually break down a script and know what it's like. And he took me through step by step. And I think he really helped me out for as far as my first script to break down, because I understood the gags that were going to come up and how they were going to shoot it. I wasn't an expert at it by any means. I was still very young. In the olden days, they didn't give credits. Universal never gave credits. I don't know about Warner Brothers because I wasn't working there at the time, but at Universal, if there was special effects, it would say special effects Universal titles. And I don't know why they didn't give credit to the coordinator at least, but in those days it was done quite differently. When you were working for Universal, you were working for Universal. You were not an individual that did this show. But in the other hand, the other side of that is you were there the whole time. When your show was over, you're back in the shop working, or you're working on another group of shows, or until another big show comes in. So you're not like unemployed in between features, as I am now. As soon as we're done with making movies now, as soon as the last day of wrap is, you're off payroll. You have to find another job. Working with Elliot Silverstein, first of all, he was my first director that I've ever really talked to, and wanted my opinion and things. So I wasn't really sure if he was great, if he was average, or if he was really not that good. But he was very helpful in the prep of the show, and I thought he was a super nice guy. But by the time we got out into the desert and things, there was a lot of pressures and things. He was strictly business, He'd say what he wanted, and we would come up with something close to that. Even though there was a lot of prep on the things, there was a lot of surprises on that show. The desert heat in the middle of summer with not a tree in sight. We worked in St. George, which was at Dixie Downs, which was nothing but a bunch of horse manure on a track. It was a dirt track, and that's where we worked a lot. It didn't seem that terrible there. It was doable. Of course, I was young. I don't remember any of that stuff, how hot it was or how difficult it was. Nowadays, I could tell you every day that I feel the pain of cold and heat. But by the time we got to Glen Canyon, which is in Kanab, it was probably 103 every day. We never wore hats. I wore sunglasses, but we wore shorts and no sunscreen, and they never pushed the water thing like they do now. But yes, it was very hot and difficult, and there were people, they had tents for the extras and actors and things like that, but we didn't have the big motorhomes out like they have now with the air conditioning and the flat screen. They had a tent to sit under, and that's where they do their makeup and everything else. And the wind would blow through there, and the dust, and your teeth would be gritty all the time, and it was a lot of fun. But everybody, actors, all the way down to craft service, we were all in the same environment, all eating the same dust. James Brolin was a really down-to-earth, real nice guy. We'd go to Lake Powell anytime we could at lunchtime to cool off. And, when we were working in Glen Canyon. And the cast, like I say, in those days, everybody seemed equal, Of course, we had the director who was our captain, and we had the sergeants was our coordinators and things like this. But as far as, there was nobody really better than anybody else. We all were working in the same environment. We all were sweating, hot, misery, doing shots over and over again. We'd look at each other going, no, I thought that one was good. What do you think, Jim? Yeah, I thought that was good too. Especially the shot that killed him the most was trying to, when the car had already gone over and he came around on the motorcycle and the car hits him and they throw the rope down and it gets caught in the little crevice, which was tons of inserts that were so terrible to do. He's trying to crawl up this thing and he's lost all his energy. I mean, he can't keep his feet higher than his body. So every time he pulls his body up, his feet just goes down. Finally, he just says, that's it. So the prop man and I both got in our wardrobe and we both took turns hanging off the thing, crawling up, different instances of just there, up against the side of the mountain. And that was pretty good. We never got anything extra for it. I had a beard at the time and I had to shave my beard off or just make it really short for that shot. But, and I thought, just part of the job. It was all mechanical effects. There was no computers to back us up. There was Albert Whitlock, who did matte artistry in post-production, but he'd have to come out and shoot plates for weeks at a time to do that. It was very involved, and I didn't understand 100% of the whole matte drawing thing. We did plan a lot of these, the gags, we call them. Stunts are what the stunt guys do. A stunt would be the cannon roll that we saw. That was a stunt. We assisted by putting an explosive device in a cannon to do it, but Stunts was doing it. The car rollover stunt was driven by Rock Walker, a stuntman, and coordinated by Everett Creech. All of this was very new to me. I've never seen a cannon roll, and pretty soon I get this memo that I'm totally in charge of placing the cannon and the explosives in it. Now, I was counting on Jack Faggart a lot on that he would know the explosives part. He was a very good pyrotechnician at the time. So I counted on that. I was a pretty good welder and fabricator, but we still ended up going to a welding, fabricating place to do it because where we were working, what we call tailgate effects, is basically that. The tailgate comes down and whatever's on that trailer you use, and you work right off the tailgate in the desert. That type of job for putting a cannon and extra reinforcements in the car and roll cages and stuff had to be done by something that had a shop that we could do a controlled thing. I was there in the shop supervising, and when I saw what they were doing, it's like, yeah, you guys got this. I gave them the cannon and told them what we were going to do with it. So basically the two police cars were, and we didn't rehearse this at all. There was no really rehearsal for this because it just came up. When it was going to be a stunt, I always thought, this is a stunt. Stunts are going to do it. I don't know how they're going to do this and roll over two police cars, but it was in the script all the time, where the two police cars would come up, Rock would be driving down this way. Now he'd have to slide the car sideways, and then once he went all the way sideways, he'd hit a button that we'd give him inside the car that would fire this telephone pole and hit the ground out of this tube, have an explosive charge on top of it. It would drive the pole down like this, tipping the car. He would decide when would be the best time to do that when the police cars. So then it rolled over the top of the police cars, and then the car, of course, was destroyed. We had to do the other part with the police cars going off to each side and the car coming back, going straight and driving away untouched. Well, how we accomplished that is putting a cannon on the other side, and Rock would have to go drive backwards, pitch it sideways, and the cannon now is right behind his head. And when we fired that one, plus we added 2 ounces of powder. I forgot to add that part. Added 2 ounces of powder to get some real lift because there was no cars for him to go over. The cars were already gone. And then they were going to reverse that film so it would look like the cars just continue rolling and drive away. So that was the shot that they thought. I never had good confidence in it. As soon as we fired that thing, I have to say that the Lincoln Continentals, by the time we were doing that cannon shot, we were searching all over Utah for those and putting parts on it and trying to reinforce them. So this car happened to be pretty rusty, I guess, because when it fired, the car went from flat to like this and just went on its back. And Rock was, he was in there, trapped in there for quite a long time. But it was safe. We put fuel cells in it and everything. We do a lot of good prep on that, for stunts. A.J. Bakunis was on our set. Everett Creech hired him. We needed a high fall. And in those days, back in the olden days, they would start by doing high falls on a piece of plywood with coffee cups underneath them out of a second-story building. And right before they come down, they'd flip on their back and hit flat on their back. And I'd always thought that was pretty crazy. But apparently the coffee cups hold enough air to decelerate you enough. I don't ever believe that. But anyway, then they went to cardboard boxes. And when we scouted this location, it was it was a bridge, the Hurricane Bridge, in between the town of Hurricane and Zion, the entrance to Zion. And it's called Hurricane Bridge. It's a giant canyon, and it's about 265 feet down. Now, I've seen stunt guys fall into boxes and things, but I could never think how he's going to do a jump like that. There was no bungee jumping in those days or ever thought of, and I don't think he could have made that anyway. They come up with this big giant airbag. Now this airbag is about 6 feet tall. It's about 40 by 40 feet with an 8-foot red square in the middle. It has baffles on the side, so when it is hit by somebody, the little flaps open up and let the air out very slowly. If it was a balloon and somebody hit it, you'd either bounce like a trampoline or you'd just really hurt yourself bad. So it has a feature that as you hit it, it exhausts the air and sets you down real slow. So that was the theory. He had really no fear, and I was rigging on that bridge and just looking down. Now, I don't mind heights. I'm a climber and things, but just to think of standing up on that handrail and jumping off into a bag, even though it was 40 by 40, when you look down there, it looked like a foot square at 265 feet down. It ended up, he gets up on the thing, he's balancing on the handrail, he's ready to jump. A storm is in Zion coming down. We got to go real fast. We got to go pretty quick because we didn't know if a flash flood was going to come in, and I didn't know what was going on. So he gets up there, and right before he goes, Elliot says, he needs to have the bicycle in his hand, because he was the boy that was riding down as the car came up, hit the bicycle, and the boy on the bicycle went over. So Elliot thought he needs the bicycle to throw right as he jumps. Well, he did all that, and it was fine with it. And I thought he was great, because even after that, he was helping us do all these little stunts and gags.
No, not yet. Now go!
The car stunt off the cliff started out as a test at the dump at Universal. We had a large accumulator with a tube, a 4-inch tube coming off it. Inside of the car was a welded tube also that would slip over the top of this other tube. When we fired a valve and opened the air, it would launch the car, and it was perfect. And Elliot wanted it to launch, go perfectly flat, and land on all 4 tires, and we only were up maybe 40 feet in the air. So when we accomplished that, he thought, well, we got that gag. When we got out to the desert, there was no way to build a ramp at the site that they picked on location. So we decided just to tow the car. It's a tow and release by pulling a vehicle off camera, and this other car would go. As soon as that car went over the cliff, it pointed straight down and went straight down. So Elliot wasn't really happy with the shot that we did on location. So in post-production, we reenacted the same scenario we had at the dump by building a big accumulator that holds air and doing the pipe and everything like that. Well, the day crew welded up the tube inside of the car, or so it was thought, and the night crew bundled it all up and sent it out. Well, they figured out that the day crew only did half the job and was expecting the night crew to finish it, which they just sent it out. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, they have all the cameras ready. We have the accumulator charged. And when we fired off the car off this ramp, it was enough momentum All the welds broke inside and shot this tube out 1,200 feet, about 800 feet past the camera crew, a 4-inch by 20-foot long tube shooting through the air. A friend of mine has a still of it that I was looking for, but I can't find it. And it looks like a little arrow flying through the air. And it was enough momentum, though, to bring the car up and set it straight down. The exact same shot we had in the desert. So we fixed that, though. We did it the third time, and it was, of course, successful because we checked the welds and everything. When you're counting on the effects shop and the welding shop to do all this stuff, I mean, usually they're spot on perfect, but this time there was a little glitch. Like, we'll tack it all up, night crew will finish it, transportation will come and send it out. Well, one step was missed, and I'll tell you, that's how accidents happen on the set all the time. And we really, other than we built a ramp all night long, and we were on our 18th hour by the time we fired the thing, nobody really went inside the car to see. All our mechanical stuff was outside, the firing device, everything else was perfect. We had enough air to charge the cylinder to 1,000 PSI. So everything was really checked except for what the welders did that we've always assumed, and you know what an assumption does.
Hit it! Hit the damn thing!
The smoke effect was really more of a fireball. There was a lot of smoke in it because we used gasoline. So what we did, it was kind of crazy, and I thought it was not thought out as well as it could have been, but we cut some 55-gallon barrels in half. We put some wire through them, heavy wire or cable, and had them there. And then we ran cables over the hill and had them set at the ledge of our cliff, about 4 feet behind the cliff. Then we lined up our actors, and we did a slow motion shot, which is a speed shot, but it's slow motion. We call it speed, but it is really a slow motion shot, where the sun is supposed to be coming up. We're firing off dust explosions on the side for dust drifting, as the car was supposed to have done something down in the bottom that we haven't seen yet. And they're going very slow motion, and then we fire off this fireball that Elliot thought that we could shape something into kind of a roundish fireball skull looking, you know. Well, you know, when you do fire off a bunch of gas together, it does kind of make kind of like a nuclear blast look, you know, with the mushroom cloud. So we thought we could maybe simulate that, and I think we did okay on it. Al Whitlock, on the Mad Artist, of course, came out and did a lot of the detail on it. And I thought it turned out pretty good, considering we did it live out in the field. We didn't have too much control. Like nowadays, we'd go in on a blackened backing and set up something and do a multiple amount of explosions, and then they'd all put it in on the computer. Those, we didn't quite have that capability of doing that, or, you know, we just always try and do everything practical. In those days, we had to. I still try and do everything practical. And at meetings, when they say, oh no, it's CG, I always ask why, you know, because it costs a lot more. It takes a little more production time, and you got to add that in at $120,000 a day or whatever they spend on it. You're thinking, well, if it takes 2 hours to do this gag, is it cheaper just to do it in post? Or a lot of the guys go, let's just make it go to CG. We won't have to do it or think about it. But I don't think like that. And a lot of the older guys don't. The newer guys are relying more on CG and just assume, oh, that's going to be CG before they even talk about it, because it seems difficult to figure out or something. I don't know.
Well, whoever he was, he isn't anymore. It's all over, Luke.
I think by the time the car came out, as far as going to a screening or anything, I was on another show. That's how it usually is with me. You're working somewhere else on another production by the time that comes out. So I might have not seen the car for a year after that. I'm not sure if I went to the screening on that. I went to the wrap party, though. It was pretty fun. When I first saw the car, like I said, I don't think I went to the screening of it, or possibly wasn't even invited to the screening of it. I was pretty impressed. It was really great to see it on film where you know all these places and, oh yeah, as you see the car going down, I was hiding right around there. Or you see the smoker and it's like, oh, that looks a little sourcey. I'll learn from that, you know, learn to break it up or something. Even the little things, when you see it on film, you can improve what you're doing, or you can say, oh man, that was flawless. But you never say that. You always see some little thing on it. But no, I thought it was very interesting, the whole movie. The car looked good the whole time. There was a lot of times which you would see it, of course, out in the desert when it was all dusty, and then the next shot it would be clean again. Our prop guys tried to keep that as clean as possible. We had a little problem with the glass because we had 2 pieces of 1/8" plexiglass. One of them was yellow, and one of them was a darker tinted, and they were both together. We'd go to our rooms at night and put them together, tape them all together, and do 3 or 4 of those in a day, and put them in the car front windshield, and in a half hour, there would be dust in between there, stacked all the way up where the driver couldn't see, and we'd have to take them out. And you couldn't clean them because this aggregate of dust was so abrasive that it would just scratch it all up. So we started getting a lot of plexiglass and cutting a lot of panels and taking them to our room every night and making as many panels as we could. Because it was not only, you could see the dust through the windshield, and it was hampering our driver's line of sight. And there was a lot of times when he was driving through crowds and people, not only stunt people, but a lot of extras and stuff. If they were far enough away from the car, we'd use extras. We wouldn't use 50 stunt people for a shot like this if they were just scattering. Like when we were at Dixie Downs at St. George, that car did a lot of things moving around, and it was so heavy that it was hard to handle. I mean, we put in air shocks to hold it up higher to have some ground clearance at times. It didn't look as good raised up, but there was times where it would just hit the floorboards and just stop. So we kept putting those in, and they kept breaking those. We had a lot of breakage on those cars.
Slow down, you won't even see me!
If there was a remake of the car, I'd like the opportunity to work on it. I think that would be fun, just to say, oh yeah, I worked on it 40 years ago or whatever, 35 years ago. But it would be done a lot differently. There would have been a lot of visual effects involved in it. The car may not even be the car. It could all be generated. They're doing that so well now. I mean, we'd have a model, but we wouldn't have to worry about, it would always be shiny. It would never be bent. There'd be no fingerprints on it. The bumper wouldn't be hanging off after a little gag of a shot where we'd have to cut, put it back on, and then continue on. That was one of Elliot's biggest bitches, is that he wanted to do a bunch of continuous shots. This car goes off here, does the turn, goes through the crowd, horses are running all over the place, and then does a 360 and comes back. We never got big, long shots with that. For one, it would get too dusty, and we'd always have to keep it pristine and clean. And any stunt that it did, it would bend pretty easily. It was a lot of sheet metal added to a Lincoln Continental. Some of my highlights in special effects. Oh, well, I like the Die Hard series. I thought those were very good. I think Bruce Willis does a great job at being John McClane. And I think the best thing is working with good directors or great directors. I have in the past 40 years worked with everybody that I've ever wanted to work with, except possibly Ron Howard. I've never gotten the opportunity, although I've worked with his company before on a few jobs, but he wasn't directing. I'd really like to be involved with one of his projects. But being that my days are numbered in special effects, I'm going to try and retire next year. And I don't know if Ron Howard's going to do anything that is special effectsy, but I would sure hope so. I'd love to do a show with him. But as far as the directors, yeah, that would be my highlight in special effects, is working with not only directors, but all these people that, really know how to make a movie. You know, from directors of photography, lighting people, grips. I've run into grips that it's like, man, you are the best. I mean, if you get a good crew together, you have all the confidence in the world that anything that comes up, I don't care how crazy it is, you can do it, either on the set or you have a shop to back you up, or a good special effects coordinator that has good people, that knows how to jump on something and not like, well, let's see if we can wait it out, you know, something like that. But I like working with people that know what's going on, you know, and often that happens more than not.